We are each making over $100,000 after taxes as our yearly salary as physical therapy new grads.
And this is because travel physical therapy stands out as one of the highest paying opportunities for physical therapists.
But why are the pay breakdowns always so confusing?
We're going to reveal our weekly paychecks and break down everything that goes into them.
This way, you have a strong understanding of what a travel physical therapist salary actually looks like. We're Carly and Brandon, two travel physical therapists currently on our very first contract in Elko, Nevada.
We share our personal journey and give you the information on how to become a new grad travel PT.
There's no such thing as a true travel PT salary because as contracted workers, you're paid weekly, not yearly. But to keep it simple, what we're going to do is we're going to take what we expect to earn at the end of our very first year as our salary.
Now there's a huge distinction that needs to be made before we go any further, and that is the difference between gross pay and net pay. For a normal permanent job in physical therapy, jobs will almost always be advertised as the gross pay that the therapist is expected to make in a year. This is the amount of money that is made before taxes are taken out.
In Pennsylvania, where we're from, we would have expected to start out of school at around $70,000 to $90,000 per year as our gross annual salary, only expecting to be able to grow up to about $105,000 to maybe $110,000 per year. And that's pretty much the maximum that we would expect to earn after years of practicing.
So let's take a look at that new grad scenario and assume that out of school as a permanent physical therapist, we made a salary of $78,000 per year gross pay. After all the taxes and deductions, that actual take-home pay becomes much lower than that $78,000.
So filing taxes in PA as a single, we take the $78,000 and remove roughly 30% of that. And this is about an average to a high-end deduction of what we would expect to make after taxes. But that does depend on your state. So by doing that calculation, that gives us our net pay. And our net pay would be $54,600 per year. We don't want to say this is bad money, but you do have to compare it to the cost of school. That being said, I left school personally with $247,000 in student loans, and only making $54,600 per year after taxes is quite frankly ridiculous, especially when you factor in cost of living, rent, saving for retirement. Not to mention only being able to afford probably the minimum payment on my loans. The compounding interest would have me paying this loan back over decades. So I would therefore have pretty much no money left over to save for anything.
So we needed to figure something else out. We decided that we weren't going to accept this as our future, and we were going to start digging into different avenues within the PT world to see what other options there were. We ended up finding Travel PT, which didn't have a lot of information out there on it. At first, we were a little bit confused because we couldn't compare just permanent PT salaries to travel PT pay because, like we said, there really is not a true travel PT salary.
But after running lots of numbers and figuring out how the pay compares, we learned that this was not just an option, but it was the option. And on top of that, we realized we'd be able to travel the whole country, which is something that we always wanted to do.
All right, it's time to show you the real paychecks that we receive.
So here's how much we genuinely make after taxes on our very first travel PT contract as new grads. This is fresh out of school, and what we earn each week. Again, this is each week, not bi-weekly.
This completely changed our financial future when you think about our initial plan that would have taken us 30 plus years to pay off our loans. This is saving us thousands of dollars on interest. We break down our loan repayment strategy on our Instagram and Facebook pages, going month by month and breaking down all the expenses we have and exactly how much money we're putting towards loans each month. Go check it out. Links are in the description.
Oh, and if you noticed, this first paycheck down here is a bit larger. We'll explain this in a moment. But first, let's compare that to the original net pay that we would have been making as permanent travel PT staff as new grads, which was $54,600. Looking back over here to that $2,104 that we're making weekly, if you multiply that by 48, which we're multiplying by 48 because we're taking 4 weeks off during the year, we are getting $100,992 after taxes every year.
So let's just assume that we would stay in this contract for a full year. Using that number, we can come up with what our gross pay would be as a permanent PT. So after that calculation, we find $144,274 to be the gross pay. We find that by dividing the $100,992 that we make in net pay by 0.7, and what that does is it adds back the remaining 30% that would be taken out for taxes if this was a permanent salary position.
So, how is this possible? We told you we'd break this paycheck down so you can understand how travel physical therapists are actually paid. Here are the 4 main things to understand that lets us actually get paid this much as new grads fresh out of school. The first thing are the stipends.
There are usually 2 types of stipends that you receive as a travel PT. These are housing and grocery. These stipends are the reason that we are able to make so much as travel PTs.
This is because it is tax-free. The main benefit of being a travel PT is that a majority of the money that you make is non-taxed, and that's how we're able to pocket most of the money that we earn. The next portion of our paycheck here is our hourly wage. This is the part that is still taxed.
This hourly wage is ideally as low as possible because you want your stipends to be as high as possible, making most of your pay non-taxable.
Because as travelers we're paid hourly, this is where it's important to get a 40-hour guarantee in your contract. Check out this video to make sure you never start a contract without one.
If you fail to get this 40-hour guarantee in your contract, your stipends will also get prorated to the amount of hours you worked per week. So if you work less than 40 hours in a week, you're not getting your full stipend.
The third part of our paycheck here is the travel stipend.
Travel companies offer a non-taxable travel stipend, which is to cover the cost of gas, hotel, and food as you're traveling to your destination. Depending on the company, this can be a flat rate or it can be by the mile.
And since this money is non-taxed, you can probably pocket some of this money if you travel smart and frugally. Our personal experience with the travel reimbursement is a little different because we agreed to take a smaller travel reimbursement in place of the next part of the paycheck, our bonuses.
But first, an important note about bonuses. Bonuses are not typical, and sometimes they can actually be a red flag for some contracts because it poses the question, why is the clinic so desperate to hire a worker? Why can't they ever staff anybody?
On this specific contract, we were offered a sign-on bonus and a completion bonus, each of a $1,000 value. However, these had about a 30% tax, so really there were 2 $700 bonuses, but we're not going to be complaining about that.
The reason that our first paycheck was larger is because of our sign-on bonus, the $300 travel stipend we received, and reimbursement for our Nevada licensure.
Also, we weren't paid until the end of our second week for our first week, but this is pretty typical in pretty much any job. We hope that this was a clear explanation as to what a travel physical therapist's salary is, and how it can fluctuate depending on which contract you're at and how much time you take off during the year.
If you have any questions, leave a comment or reach out to us via email. Our email is in the description.
And if you want to make sure you start Travel PT strong, we made a video on how to nail your first interview. Check it out right here.